could live in an apartment with the pieces of a person rotting away with decay and not know it?
I was totally sick during that period.
So you didn't kill her, but you did carve her up?
No.
Who carved her up?
There was like 3 people involved in the carving.
So you were denying that you killed her, and you're denying that you took part in carving her up?
Oh, that's the point. It was washing bones.
Washing bones? Why were you washing bones?
Because it was smelly.
Episode 85, Radio Free Innsmouth. This week, I got a couple of CDs in the mail. I got, so there's this label out there, Dark Descent. They put out good stuff. There's this other label out there, Dark Symphonies. They reissue good stuff. So these two labels got together. Boom. They give you these deluxe, bonus track ridden, fancy liner notes reissues of Castle's eponymous 1993-94 album and Apoplexy's 1996 5 or 6 album, Tears of the Unborn. You heard Castle in the intro there. They're pretty weird Dutch death metal with a heavy influence from the more gothic post-punk bands of the 80s, so the whole post-punk metal fusion thing isn't anything new, but the older bands tend to do it better. As you heard there, sort of a weird meeting ground between 80s goth rock and very heavy death doom metal. They started in 1987. That album didn't come out till like 1994, so they had a long time to hone that sound. That was in the intro until you were assaulted by a bunch of K-pop gibberish and a fucking Batushka song. Whatever, sorry, had to do it. Had to be done, YouTube. And Apoplexy are a very strange medievalist take on a mid-90s death with the more rock and roll centric songwriting tendencies excised in favor of general weirdness. I'll probably use that as the outro. Speaking of Batushka, so there's like the real Batushka that put out that album in 2015, that Liturgia thing, and then as I've covered on this program, it's split in two directions. One guy that didn't actually write any of the music tried to sue to take the band from the other guy. Now there's two different versions of Batushka. One put out an album called, I think, like Panahildia or something. That's actually very good. The other one put out an album that sucks, and I'm not even going to name it. But now there's another Russian band running around claiming to be actual Orthodox priests playing black metal, also claiming to be the real Batushka. I guess you pronounce it like there's a Y in there. And they've put out 2 albums in 2019 so far. They're both terrible. This might just be internet trolls. Whatever. What a fucking mess.
This shit is not cool.
This week, however, we are, in fact, going back in time to the early to mid-2000s, talking about an Australian band called Misery's Omen, formed by Denny Blake and Damon Good from Cauldron Black Ram, and a shit ton of other bands. They've done work for Martyr. They've been in Stargazer. Well, they run Stargazer. They have forever. That's probably their most famous band. But my favorite is, of course, Cauldron Black Ram, who are high quality stuff. And I think, was it the drummer was in like Mournful Congregation at one point? No. It was the guitarist dude. He was in Mournful Congregation. I think he still is, actually. So they're in 2 big bands, Mournful Congregation and Stargazer. But I think they did their best work in Cauldron Black Ram. And then they're joining up with this other guy, Anthony Till, who is from 2 very underrated bands, Sacriphyx and Innsmouth. Now, I'll probably do episodes on Sacriphyx and Cauldron Black Ram and even Innsmouth separately. But to give you guys an idea of what we're dealing here, we have a black metal band, nominally black metal, nominally depressive black metal, but very strange stuff. And it's brought to you by the Cauldron Black Ram guys, who sound like this. It's a very primitive and brutish sort of death metal, I guess. There's a bit of black metal in there too. They utilize a lot of very strange swing-based tempos for the genre. And they sort of had this weird Old Englishy feel to the lyrics. Very unique atmosphere given to everything. Lots of rolling of the R's. In more ways than one, because they do songs about pirates. Derp. But then you're making that work with a guy from a band that sounds like this. This would be Sacriphyx, of course, who have a hefty amount of old school Greek black metal influence which they weave into songs of heroism and tragedy concerning Australia's actions in World War I, which was sort of a important part of the birth of the Australian national identity. They got Anzac Day and all that. But obviously this is very disparate from Cauldron Black Ram, and the idea of either of these bands somehow combining into some sort of weird depressive black metal man doesn't make a lot of sense until you realize that there are also Cauldron Black Ram songs that sound like this. So they can get a little bit atmospheric and shimmery and dark when they need to. So this is certainly a little bit more in the realm of conventional sad boy black metal than some of their more barbarous stuff. It all still kind of fits, as you'll notice with this transition into style black metal. And then of course there are also Sacriphyx things that can line up with that. So it's not all just warrior spirit crashing against the engines of modernity. There's also a lot of sentimentality and existential despair to what Sacriphyx did, which when combined with the strangeness of Misery's Omen gives you a very odd take on existential dread and depression in sort of a Lovecraftian context. The only other band I think that mines that sort of milieu for their atmospherics and lyrical content would be Thurgothen from Finland, who did some very depressive sounding stuff about the whole Lovecraft thing. Sonically, however, Misery's Omen and Thurgothen are very, very different. Misery's Omen utilizes a lot of very strange elements to their music. They have some very dissonant and nasty stuff. Jeez, this is downright gross. The slithery bass lines, the very dissonant chord voicings, harrowing vocal performance. Sounds like some crazy guy ranting, leading into some truly chilling bass-heavy tremolo riffs. They also have some very epic sounding stuff. Nice Burzum drum beat. We have this pretty cool cyclical guitar line looping in on itself. The bass isn't quite as wacky as it was in that other clip. And then we have ye old primitive black metal. Like, this sounds like some straight up destruction worship, Master's Hammer style, nasty black thrash. So once again, how do you make all three of these elements work? Well, they can actually do them in sequence, sliding between different black metal subgenres to show the many facets of mental disintegration. So this would be the more epic sounding stuff with a bit of a dark edge to it. They also like to do that trick where they wander into the higher ends of the bar chords there to give that odd shimmery sound towards the tail ends of riffs. Like that. They're also very technically adept for a black metal band. In fact, all of these guys are exceptional musicians, particularly the guys from Cauldron Black Ram, though that band was very primitive. They do some really wacky technical stuff in Stargazer. And also in this band, there's a cool little transition that has notes of what would later become Sacriphyx into an almost happy sounding riff. Certainly a bit more at ease than the Storm und Drang of that earlier part. There's still lurking darkness in there, don't worry. They're going to use a very cool compositional trick in just a bit. Okay, so pay attention to these little sweet picky arpeggio things. Because right here they're just sort of used to link together musical phrases, but that same glue is going to become an important motif that is deconstructed into utter madness, much in the way that looking at a Shoggoth might do to your very mind. We got the Lovecraft thing going on. Lovecraft and suicide and just general despair. But not a depressing album because of how well written it is. It's a a joy to listen to. Here's these sweet pick parts again. Watch what they do with them this time. There's almost something heroic to it. Tragically heroic, of course. Yeah, there we go. Same riff, but complete collapse into insanity. How about that, YouTube? Pretty weird. That's not even the end of the song, it's just the transition to the next section. So this is Damon Good doing some cool fretless bass stuff. Fun fact, he actually did some fretless bass work for one of my favorite local bands, Blood Incantation. So all the way from Australia over to Dude Weedlamau land. So hopefully those short little samples convinced you to look into Misery's Omen. All they put out was that one full length and then some demos in the 90s that were later collected on a self-titled compilation album. But they're very good. It's one of my favorite black metal albums. It actually got me to start paying attention to more recent black metal again. Which is funny because Cauldron Black Ram was actually one of the death metal bands that got me to start paying attention to more recent death metal. But hopefully you liked it, and I will see you guys next week, hopefully with another shorter episode. Sorry about that Brana called Epic Tome of Metal Knowledge. Sorry, not sorry. I thought it was good. Have a good one.
Because I just fucking hate this world.
Ain't got time for your problems. He busy with Korean shit.